I always sat at the end of the table. Close enough to hear, but far enough to be forgotten. That Sunday was no different. The brunch cafe buzzed with low chatter and clinking coffee cups. I stirred my cold brew slowly, the same way I had stirred it every weekend, patient, quiet, invisible. Vivian's laughter cut through the room like a blade. "Imagine being 30 and still playing with computers," she said, tossing her hair back like a victory flag. Some chuckled politely. Most looked away. No one defended me. Not even my parents. I just pressed my lips together, eyes fixed on the swirling ice in my glass. I had learned long ago that silence was safer than trying to explain myself. What Vivian didn't know was this. The job she mocked, the life she dismissed, would soon be the very ground she walked on. Built by the sister she never bothered to see. When we were kids, Vivian was the star. Bright, bold, loud enough to fill a room. I was the quiet one, the afterthought in every family photo. At school plays, she was center stage, waving proudly. I sat in the second row, clapping until my hands stung, unnoticed. Birthdays were the same story. Vivian's parties spilled into the backyard with balloons and streamers. Mine were smaller, quieter. Once, my 12th birthday gift was a refurbished laptop, handed to me between conversations about Vivian's latest dance recital. I didn't mind. At least, I told myself I didn't. I spent hours alone with that old laptop, piecing together programs, lines of code, little puzzles only I cared about. My parents called it Eleanor's strange hobby. Vivian called it wasting time. I still remember the day she won her first state championship. Gold trophy in hand, she burst into the living room just as my birthday candles were being lit. The room shifted instantly. All eyes on her. My cake, forgotten, the candles burning too low to matter. No one asked what I wished for that year. No one even noticed when I blew them out alone. At family dinners, conversations swirled around Vivian's latest auditions, her photo shoots, her college plans. No one asked about my computer science scholarships. No one remembered the nights I stayed up fixing glitches and finishing competitions in the glow of a cracked screen. Once, I overheard my uncle say, "At least Vivian will make something of herself." My father chuckled quietly. My mother didn't correct him. I learned to stop expecting recognition. Stop hoping for it. By the time I graduated top of my class, no one showed up to the ceremony. Vivian had a gallery showing the same day. They were busy, they said. Maybe next time. There was never a next time. Over the years, I stopped telling them about my life. When I co-founded Dataloom, I didn't mention it. When our first big contract came through, I kept the celebration small, a quiet coffee with Sam and a silent smile to myself. Success, I learned, doesn't need applause. It grows best in the shadows. I chose the shadows willingly. But sometimes, when Vivian laughed a little too loudly at my supposed failures, I wondered. Had I ever really been seen by them at all? And that quiet doubt, that quiet ache, never quite left me. That brunch felt heavier than usual. Maybe it was the rain tapping against the window, or maybe it was the way Vivian's laughter sliced through the quiet like a knife. The cafe smelled of burnt espresso and warm syrup. Families huddled close over steaming plates. Ours sat in stiff silence, broken only by Vivian's voice. "You know," she said loudly, twirling her fork through her salad, "some people our age are already directors, VPs. And some are still playing with computers in their bedrooms." She didn't need to look at me. Everyone knew who she meant. I kept my eyes down, tracing invisible circles on the rim of my glass. The coffee had long gone cold, forgotten like most things attached to my name. My mother gave a nervous chuckle, then quickly looked away. My father cleared his throat and muttered something about the weather. No one corrected her. No one defended me. Vivian leaned back in her chair, proud of herself. She loved these moments, the little victories where she could prove, even in a casual brunch, that she was the shining one. The important one. I didn't respond. Not because I agreed. But because I'd learned there was nothing I could say that they would hear. Words had limits. Silence, on the other hand, could stretch farther than any insult. I remembered when I used to try. Bringing up my tech projects. Mentioning the startup. Talking about the late nights and early mornings spent coding in near darkness. The responses were always the same. "That's nice, honey. Maybe you should get a real job too, just in case. You're so smart, but no one ever hears about what you do. They said it kindly, but kindness can cut deeper when it's laced with disbelief. It tells you, we don't see you. We never did. At that brunch, their silence screamed louder than any insult. It told me exactly where I stood in their eyes. Background noise. Static. Vivian smirked, flipping her hair over her shoulder like she was brushing off dust. I mean, at some point, she added, voice syrupy sweet, you have to stop pretending hobbies are careers. I stirred my coffee once, twice, letting the clink of the spoon against the cup be my only answer. She laughed again, satisfied. The conversation shifted toward her latest job applications, her networking events, her plans to finally make it big. No one asked me how I was doing. No one noticed when I tucked my chair back a little from the table, creating space, building a distance only I could see. I sat there, invisible, stirring cold coffee, listening to their dreams for her and remembering mine were built alone. That day, I made a quiet decision. No dramatic exits. No angry speeches. No fights or tears. Just a withdrawal. An invisible line drawn between their world and mine. A door I would soon learn to close gently, without making a sound. After that brunch, I stopped waiting for things to change. Stopped waiting for them to notice. The next few weekends, I skipped the family gatherings. No explanations. No apologies. At first, my mother texted once. Busy today? I answered politely. Yes, work deadlines. She didn't ask again. It was easy to slip away when no one was really holding on. Easier than I thought it would be. I didn't unfriend them. I didn't block anyone. I simply let the space between us grow wide enough to become its own kind of silence. When Vivian posted her party photos online, I clicked like out of habit. But I never commented. I never reached out. At work, my days stretched into long, focused hours. Lines of code built bridges only I could walk across. Meetings blurred into more meetings. Late nights turned into early mornings. The emptiness left by their absence didn't ache the way I expected. It just existed. Like background noise you stop hearing after a while. Some nights, sitting by the window of my small apartment, I wondered if they even noticed the gap I left behind. Probably not. Vivian still shined brightly on social media. Mom still posted flower bed photos and baking fails. Dad still shared blurry sunsets from the golf course. Life went on without me, just as it had when I was right there, sitting silently at their table. One evening, I scrolled past a post of Vivian celebrating her new job interview. She stood in front of a glossy office building, beaming with that signature confidence she carried like armor. The caption read, "Big changes ahead. Fingers crossed." I smiled faintly. Not bitterly. Not cruelly. Just, quietly. The company logo behind her was one I knew very well. Dataloom. My company. The one she still thought was just a startup someone else had built. The one she had no idea I co-founded. I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of the moment settle. No anger. No triumph. Just a kind of tired understanding. Sometimes, life had a way of folding neatly onto itself. Like a story you didn't need to force. It would write its own ending if you were patient enough. Vivian had applied for a position in the finance department. Her resume was decent. Experience in budget planning, moderate leadership skills. Nothing flashy, but competent. I received the internal candidate file the next morning. Her name printed clean across the top. Vivian Reed. I could have flagged it. I could have rejected it. But I didn't. Instead, I clicked approve. One small action. One quiet choice. No revenge. No cruelty. Just closure. If she was capable, she'd succeed. If she wasn't, she would fail, on her own. Either way, it wasn't my job to teach her a lesson. It was never about proving anything to them. It was about proving to myself that I didn't need their permission to exist. Vivian started at Dataloom on a rainy Monday. The kind of gray morning that smeared the city skyline into a watercolor blur. I didn't go in that day. I rarely did. Most of my work happened remotely, behind layers of secured networks and encrypted servers. I preferred it that way. Unseen. From the moment she joined, I heard whispers float up through the ranks. She's confident. She's got energy. She's definitely not shy about sharing her ideas. Sam, my co-founder and closest friend, sent me short updates. Nothing too detailed. Just enough for me to keep a quiet eye from a distance. She's good at talking, he said one evening over video call. But the real test will be if she can listen. I smiled, knowing how rare that skill was. Weeks passed. Vivian moved quickly. She integrated into the finance team, pitched a few small budget strategies, got noticed for her presentation skills. The same charisma that once made her the darling of every family event now turned heads in office meetings. And yet, beneath it all, a slow tension brewed. It started small. An odd glance at a project chart. A frown while reviewing internal documents. The first time she saw my name, Eleanor Reed, signed off on a departmental budget approval, she barely blinked. But curiosity is a stubborn thing. The second time, she hesitated. The third, she asked around. Who's Eleanor? Some senior advisor, someone said casually. One of the originals, but super private. It didn't satisfy her. Of course it didn't. Vivian never liked mysteries she couldn't solve. Especially not when those mysteries sat above her in the approval chain. I stayed quiet, watching through internal logs as she accessed more and more archived files. Old funding memos. Organizational charts. Founding documents. Every trail led back to me. But never publicly. Never on a press release, a front page, or a website banner. I had built an empire of influence without ever stepping into the spotlight. And Vivian? Vivian was walking deeper into it every day, unaware whose shadow she had entered. Then, one Friday afternoon, it happened. Sam called me, voice half amused, half cautious. She's starting to connect the dots, he said. She found an old internal memo with your co-founder ID attached. I didn't panic. I simply leaned back in my chair and watched the rain slip down the window. Some truths don't need to be shouted. They reveal themselves in silence. Later that night, an alert pinged on my dashboard. Internal access request, Budget Core Archives. User, V. Reed. She had reached the vault. The place where all founding contracts, shareholding agreements, and technical ownership records were stored. It didn't take long. Another ping. Document access, Founder's Ledger. I closed my laptop and let the silence wrap around me like an old, familiar coat. I imagined her sitting there under the flickering fluorescent lights, eyes wide, scanning through the names. Samuel Fletcher. Eleanor Reed. 50-50 ownership. Chief Technical Architect. Primary Financial Oversight Authority. There it was. Undeniable. Immovable. The sister she had laughed at, dismissed, minimized. Was the very foundation she now stood on. And I hadn't said a word. Not at brunch. Not in meetings. Not once. Because I didn't need to. The truth had found her without my help. And it spoke louder than anything I ever could have said. The confrontation didn't happen in a meeting room. It didn't happen at a company party or over a formal lunch. It happened, fittingly, in a quiet corner of the building most employees barely visited. I had come in late one evening, well past office hours, to review server logs in the tech wing. The hallways were mostly empty, lit only by soft emergency lights humming against the white walls. I was locking the server room door when I heard footsteps, sharp, hurried. Turning, I found Vivian standing at the end of the hall, clutching a folder to her chest. Her face was pale, eyes burning with something between confusion and disbelief. Eleanor, she said, almost accusingly. You're the co-founder. I didn't answer immediately. I simply met her gaze, calm, steady. I nodded once. She blinked hard, searching my face as if trying to find traces of the girl she thought she knew. The quiet sister. The invisible one. Why didn't you ever say anything, she asked, voice brittle. All this time. I shrugged slightly. Because I didn't need to. The weight of those words seemed to land heavy between us. Vivian opened her mouth, then closed it again, fingers tightening on the folder. I mocked you, she said quietly, as if realizing it for the first time. At brunch. 4 years. I thought. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I watched her shoulders slump, pride draining away, leaving something rawer behind. Not humiliation. Not anger. But something closer to regret. I stepped past her gently, not out of cruelty, but out of mercy. I wasn't there to humiliate her. I wasn't there to make a scene. The truth had already spoken louder than any speech could. At the elevator, I paused, glancing back once. She stood rooted to the spot, staring down at the folder in her hands, the one stamped with the company's founding seal. My name embossed beside it in silver ink. I pressed the elevator button without a word. As the door slid shut, I caught a glimpse of her face one last time. Not full of scorn. Not full of triumph. Just a woman finally seeing the truth she had been too proud to look at for far too long. And for the first time, I didn't feel invisible. I didn't feel small. I didn't feel angry. I felt free. I didn't expect an apology. And I didn't need one. The next few days passed quietly. At work, Vivian kept her distance. Professional. Polite. No grand gestures. No forced conversations. Exactly the way I preferred it. In meetings, she spoke only when necessary. In hallways, she nodded respectfully, the same way she did with any senior staff member. I watched from a distance, not out of cruelty, but out of curiosity. Would she change? Would she grow? Or would she crumble under the weight of a truth she could no longer deny? Weeks slipped by. Vivian settled into her role, not as the brightest in the room, but as someone willing to learn. The arrogance had dulled, replaced by something quieter, steadier. One afternoon, while reviewing project proposals, I found her name attached to a new initiative. Sponsorships for women entering tech fields. Encouragement for voices like mine once was small, overlooked, but full of potential. I set the proposal down slowly, a strange warmth blooming in my chest. Maybe some lessons didn't need to be shouted. Maybe some seeds only grew after long, uncomfortable silence. I didn't reach out. I didn't congratulate her. Growth wasn't something you applauded like a performance. It was something you witnessed quietly, from a respectful distance. A few weeks later, during a late meeting, Vivian passed me in the hallway. She hesitated, then said, voice low, steady. Thank you. For giving me a chance. Even when I didn't deserve it. I met her eyes. There was no pride there. No need for revenge. Only understanding. I nodded once, and we went our separate ways. No speeches. No dramatic reconciliations. Just two women, walking forward. Both changed, in different ways. Both quieter, stronger. Later that night, back in my apartment, I brewed a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the city lights blur against the dark. Not every story needs a perfect ending. Not every wound needs to be reopened or explained. Sometimes, the greatest freedom comes from choosing silence over noise, peace over validation. I didn't need them to see me. I saw myself, clearly enough now. And for me, that was more than enough. Sometimes, the loudest victories are the ones no one hears. Not every story ends with applause. Sometimes, it ends with a quiet, steady step forward. Have you ever chosen silence over fighting back? Have you ever found freedom not by proving your worth, but by simply living it? Share your story in the comments. And if you believe that true strength often speaks the softest, don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Where quiet hearts find their voice, not through noise, but through unshakable grace.